cheering.
Because he's working. He's working. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, we should cheer too.
Okay, so we had just a quick review. We're learning about this. First of all, this is kind of an awesome mimer. It's the Rebbe's first Lag BaOmer mimer. This is from the early years, 1951, the earliest year. And it starts off with the concept Sfartim Lachem. You shall count for yourself the Sfiras Omer. And the basic question over here is why. First of all, he discusses that we have to count both the days and the weeks, and what's up with that. In other words, we discussed it yesterday in Halacha class also. There's two different sort of mitzvahs that come together as one. You have to count the days and the weeks, which we'll discuss. And then again, the main question which is brought in all the Hasidic Memorim, why does it say Mimacharas HaShabbos? From the day after Shabbos you should start counting the Omer, and not from the day after Pesach, which is actually when it starts. In the verse it says you should count from the day after Shabbos, and that's a big question as to why that is. It leaves room for people to make a mistake, which did happen. There was the Karaites or the Tzdokim that actually went according to what's written as opposed to what's tradition, and that created chaos for a little while there.
What's that?
Because they had to fight with them and prove with them, and it's brought down till today in every Hasidic mimer, this little battle that they had. Apparently it was not a fun situation.
Those are the guys who didn't go by oral tradition?
Yeah.
Is that also, that's why they were messing with the whole thing with Rosh Chodesh.
Same folks.
Well, Kazras.
So then we said that there's a unique thing about the mincha offering of not the mincha offering, but the Omer offering, which is that it's made of barley. And the only other offering made of barley is the sota offering. The sota offering, it gives a reason, which is just like her deeds are animal deeds, so too her offering shall be an animal offering. So he said that. So what about Omer? Why is it a barley offering? So it says for the same reason, it's connected with the animal soul, because the whole idea of the Omer process is refinement of the animal soul, and therefore it's called Sfiras Omer. Omer is a barley offering. Barley is animal food, so we're working on the animal soul.
Is that the topic of this one? Oh, the Omer? Is that what?
Mm-hmm.
Because you said Sota, so I was wondering if there was like other topics or just this. No.
We learned Sota during this 49 verses in Sota, like 49.
That's right, 49 pages. That's right. So it's very, very deeply connected. We're going to go.
Oh, it's connected to the Omer.
We mentioned at the end of class. Let me catch up to that in the review, and we'll say something about that also. So then we said that when it comes to Yetzias Mitzrayim, the whole idea was it was an arousal from above, that we did nothing to trigger it, and therefore it didn't affect us really, because we didn't have the idea is that when you make arousal from below and then it reciprocates light, the fact that you make the arousal from below means you make a kli.
Wasn't that Avram?
Where?
No, here. Avraham brought the Shechina basically. Avraham made Hashem swear to take the Yidden out of Gullus and riches.
Okay, I mean, I don't know if I've ever made him swear. There was a Bris Bein HaMesorim where there was they made a covenant with each other, and part of the negative side of the covenant was that we're going to go into Mitzrayim for 400 years, or we're going to go into exile for 400 years, and at the end we'd come out with Rechush Gadol, we'd come out with great wealth. So in other words, it was planned that we're going to come out, but we could have come out theoretically through having done a little bit of an effort. But what happened is we sank so low that we didn't have any effort to give. We corrupted ourselves to the point that we had no arousal towards Hashem in order to earn that coming out of Mitzrayim. And the point, nice appearance. So does anyone have a copy for this young man? Okay. There's an extra one there. So then the idea being is that when you do an arousal from below, in other words, and you work a little bit, then so that triggers a response, and then you experience and internalize the response. Why? Because your arousal from below is basically making a kli, right? When you prepare yourself and you do something, you basically refine yourself to a certain degree so that when the light comes in, you've now made a vessel for it to come in and to collect. So that's why you can experience a little bit of panemius of the revelation. But when you make no kelim, when you haven't done the arousal on your own, but it's purely a gift from Hashem, so when it happens, it doesn't change you. And that's what happened in Yetzias Mitzrayim. Like this massive revelation took place. And on the other hand, we see in the verse, Ki barach ha'am, that the people were still fleeing and running away from Egypt. And the question we asked yesterday, why do they have to run away? They were like the masters of the place. They could do whatever they want. They were telling Paro to free them, and for when and for how long. And he basically finally broke and agreed. Why did they have to run at that point? The idea is that they were running because they were still Mitzrayim in their own estimation. In other words, they had not grown and they hadn't like really accepted God inwardly, and the whole thing was happening to them, and therefore they had to run for their own sake. They had to run to get out of there. If they would have stayed one more second, they would have just died with the Egyptians.
They were still running in the Chet HaEgel.
By the time we got to the Chet HaEgel, again, after we got to
That was
Torah...
an escape, wasn't it? Like a form of escape from the responsibilities they had.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm saying in terms of after Yetzias Mitzrayim, the next step is Sfiras Omer, but they lifted themselves up to the 50th level. So all that was through their service, basically. So now they sort of earned the light. When Matan Torah came, as we said yesterday, it was the same revelation of Pesach. The only difference, and the major difference, is that they earned this one. Every step, every day of coming out of Mitzrayim was an intense level of avodah, making a kli. Each day was another kli. Each day was another kli. So they took themselves from 49 levels up. So by the time they got to Torah, it was the same revelation of Yetzias Mitzrayim, but they internalized it because now they had kelim to get it. So as far as 40 days after that, when they worshipped the golden calf, okay, so obviously they fell and they need to go through the process of refining again. But it's not like mamish like Yetzias Mitzrayim, because they were avodaless entirely. So I guess we have to keep repeating the process on some level. Right? I guess you could say the same thing happened again, but starting from a higher place. Yeah?
That's also,
I was trying to think why we study Sota.
Oh, so we're getting to that. No, he doesn't bring it. We had kind of came across an interesting idea about that today. Yesterday. So that being said, right, we basically what we said was, in short, that why did Hashem choose the Beis HaMikdash, choose the Mishkan, in order to bring His dwelling place on this world, right? And like, why in this particular building? What did it have going for it? So the famous Maimer of Basi Lagani, its walls were made of shittim wood, and the shittim wood is called shtus, right? Shtus means the folly of the animal soul, right? Shtus, when a person does something shtusi, basically, it means it does something foolish. But nonetheless, we find that same foolishness, the same word, is the walls of the Mishkan itself. Right? So in other words, of all the places that Hashem wants to literally bring His essence to dwell into this world, it's in the shtus of the Nefesh HaBahamis. So it's obviously not the shtus in a negative sense of the Nefesh HaBahamis, that it doesn't want to dwell in your dirty laundry there. But when you take your Nefesh HaBahamis, which is a shtusi place, and you basically work on it for 49 days, right? You start to refine it and sweeten it up and so forth. That process of making a kli for Hashem and having your animal, which is in and of itself at the 49th level of degradation and totally not interested in Elokus, and it starts to basically make a move, then there's nothing sweeter than that in the whole world. That is exactly where Hashem wants to dwell. So again, why are we reading Sota during these 49 days? These 49 days basically represent the turning of the Nefesh HaBahamis, the shtus of the Nefesh HaBahamis, into the shtus of Kedusha. In order, so Hashem will come and dwell with us on Matan Torah and bring His essence down. Basically, the Mishkan and Matan Torah are parallel, right? It's Hashem's essence coming into the world. So the whole idea, how do we bring Hashem's essence into the world? We have to take the shtus, which is the Sota, and transform it into a dwelling place for Hashem. That's basically why we read Sota. It's all connected with the turning of the animal soul, which is a preparation for Matan Torah, a preparation for the Mishkan. Everyone with me? Because it's just kind of reviewing from yesterday. You following all this?
I wasn't here. What is Sota?
Sota is the Gemara that we're learning at this time. It's a parsha of the Torah where a woman who is a suspected adulteress has to drink these sort of bitter waters.
Makes her explode.
49 days.
What's that?
Why does Hashem desire to dwell in the 49 days?
Because the 49 days is like the shtus of Leumat Zeh turning into the shtus of Kedusha. It's you're refining yourself. It's taking the shtus, right? And which is your animal soul. And Omer, right? Omer is the idea of barley, animal food. And every day you're turning it, you're transforming it. Each of these days is making another kli and another kli and another kli. Where as we got the revelation to begin with, we had no kelim, and therefore it didn't change us. Now we're doing the changing on ourselves. And so ultimately when the revelation comes again, we'll internalize it because we'll have made all these 49 vessels to receive it.
You didn't mention about the two times when we make a barley offering.
Yeah, we just said that.
Oh, you did.
It was sota and this. Sota is the... Okay, it's connected with the animal. One last thing with these that we said, and this is sort of where we've been focusing, is that there's a pasuk that describes this whole three-step process. Yetzias Mitzrayim, Sfiras HaOmer, and then finally Shavuos. And that's the pasuk is Mishacheni, Acharecha Narutza, Haviani Hamelech Chadarav, which means draw me, that's Yetzias Mitzrayim. Then we will run after you. That's this period of Sfiras HaOmer. And the king will bring me to his chambers. That is Shavuos. So we said that draw me implies two things. One is that you're being drawn from above. You're not doing anything. When someone is drawn, the one who's doing something is the one who's drawing him, not the one who's going with him. Right? And so, yeah, you with me there? And that means that it's an arousal from above, again, which we did not cause through our own actions. That's what the idea of being drawn is all about. And it's a singular word, which means that the only one being drawn when Hashem took us out of Egypt was our godly soul. Our animal soul was not drawn. It wasn't interested in going. Basically, it would have stayed.
It's running the other way.
Yeah, it was drawn the other way, right? So basically, and why is it? It goes together. When we don't have vessels, so the effect of godliness upon us doesn't touch us. It only touches our godly soul and leaves ourselves still coarse behind. The only thing it gave us one thing. It didn't change us. It didn't fix us. It didn't clean us up. It gave us one thing. It gave us the impetus to change. So therefore, from that day on, from the day of Yetzias Mitzrayim, we start changing ourselves. And that's day 1 of the Omer, day 2 of the Omer, day 3 of the Omer. We start making a move from below. And what is that in the verse? Acharecha narutza. We will run after you. And we say here, we see it's a we. The first one was, I will be drawn, or draw me. This is a we will run after you. Who's the we all of a sudden? And first of all, it's a strange thing. Why does the verse go from singular to plural? Because now you've got your godly soul and your animal soul, because the animal soul is starting to work. Right? And once the animal soul works, it opens up a little space in its heart where it can be affected by godliness as well.
It always works though. No, it's the animal soul. It's like an automatic.
No, if it's going on automatic pilot, it's working, but it's working for itself. It's not working it's not.
You're saying it works with the godly soul during this Omer?
Yeah, it's working it's working on itself. In other words, working is, I guess, a funny word. What I mean work, I mean like avodas Hashem. It's trying to put in effort to change itself. I would tend to disagree with you, by the way. The animal soul does not always work. I mean, I guess like a machine, it's working, but it's not. What it's usually doing is going according to its nature, doing what's comfortable for it, falling into old patterns. That's what it does. It's an autopilot.
By
working, I mean, it goes against its nature.
Oh, so that's what you mean.
Yeah, like basically putting putting itself on the side.
You say working on itself.
And working on itself, trying to make an effort to change.
To subdue the godly soul.
Right, trying to change its passions and its natural instincts. Yeah.
Is it only working on itself if you're counting the Omer?
Counting the Omer, listen, you can always work on yourself, and you can always... One of the cool things, if you can say about being in exile, is that, if there's anything cool about it, is that we can access anything at any time. In other words, because there's no... we're sort of like in a realm of dream. We don't have the mitzvahs as they should be. So, for example, we can't bring offerings. So how do you bring an offering? You pray. So therefore, since your prayer is the offering, it doesn't have to have all the exact details of this type of animal and that type of animal and this time and that time. It's like there's more spiritual than physical. So you can always jump back in the game. But nonetheless, certainly it's the simple act of counting the Sfiras HaOmer has a huge power at this time. It's not a small thing, it's a massive thing. It's like putting on tefillin, it's like blowing a shofar. These things are not just like good old Jewish traditions. These things are like spiritual, atom bombs that were given to us in order to aid us in this process. So just like you sat in a Seder and it gave you like the arousal from above, because that's what Pesach does. So counting the Omer gives you the ability to change yourself from below. You have to definitely get on the board with counting of the Omer. It's huge. Anyway, so what's that? Okay.
Yeah, you need a rough
Okay. So then let's go inside. I think we're ready to go back inside.
What's the last part? Did we get into that?
The last what?
The last part of the verse.
Last part of the verse goes on Shavuos, Matan Torah, when Hashem brings. We didn't get to it yet inside, but just to complete the sentence here, so that when you finally work on yourself and you make the necessary vessels, and then it's Shavuos, then the king is going to bring you into his inner chambers, like you're basically manu imanu with the Melech. Okay.
What's that part in the translation?
Haviyani Hamelech Chadarav. The king will bring me to his chambers.
It's almost like Elul, huh? Elul.
There's a lot of similarities between Nisan and Tishrei in that way. Just one is sort of from below to above, as one above to below. Anyway, let's go for it. We're going to go inside here. Just find the spot. Okay. Okay, so we'll take it from, if you have it in page 64, the first word on the line is Ha-Elokis. It's about 2/3 of the way down from the top. Ha-Elokis elagam benefesh bahamis, period. You see that line? Okay. So then it says in the middle of the line after the period, it says V'zehu gam inyan haritza dafka. This, you know, paper? There's one. There's an extra paper. Is an extra paper somewhere or no? Anyway, no, these are some. All right. So anyway, this is the Indian of ritza dafka. Why does it say acharecha narutza? We will run after you. The period of the Omer in the pasuk goes on the Indian of we will run after you. First of all, what's the Indian of running? Why are we running all of a sudden? So he said, this is the nature. Zeu gam Indian haritza. Ritza is running. Zeu teva hanefesh bahamis. That's the nature of the animal soul. Shekol davar shanefesh bahamis nimsheches elav. Anything the animal soul wants, harizeh b'derech marutza dafka. It's running after it, right? That's the animal soul. It's an animal, like we said yesterday. It's not. It doesn't know from walking. It doesn't know from like taking things slow. It's a passion, right? So whatever the animal soul gets into, he's going to go into it passionately. So he's basically, in general, a runner, as opposed to like a walker, which would be sort of the godly soul. The etzla nefesh bahamis eino shayach inyan halicha la'at la'at. We said this yesterday. Sorry, we're doing a little more repeat. By the animal soul, it's not relevant walking. Ki'im b'derech marutza, only running. And we brought the analogy of Esav and Yaakov, if you remember. Esav and Yaakov wanted to go with Yaakov, and Yaakov couldn't, so to speak, keep up with him, right? Because he said, if I'm going to go with you, and we go a little bit too fast, we're going to kill the flock. The children can't keep up with you. In other words, Esav was ready to run, right? Because he represents the animal soul. And Yaakov, everything has to be organized. When it comes to the godly soul, where are you running to? In other words, everything's according to seichel and intellect. Yaakov's whole thing was that he's refining the world, basically. He's taking every little sheep and every little moment, and he's basically turning it into kedusha. You can't rush that. It's not like out of kalim and out of boundaries. It's very, very masuder and organized. That's how kedusha works, right? The animal soul, on the other hand, it's not trying to fix anything. It's just running after its passions.
The Eitzel?
Huh?
The Eitzel?
By. Ve'im kain hare mima nafshach. So this is first, we're doing a new thing now. So if so, a new line, it's the same concept here. If so, we say mima nafshach. What's mima nafshach mean? We've had this before. It's like a little Gemara phraseology. Yoni, what's mima nafshach?
Mima nafshach.
Mima nafshach means either way you look at it. It means either way you look at it. In other words, O she'einu nimshach klal linyan elokus. And what does it mean, mima nafshach, when it comes to the animal soul? Either way you look at it, in other words, from either side, either it's not drawn after godliness at all, like it was in Mitzrayim, like no thanks, that's not where I'm putting my energy, I'm into my habits and my behaviors and I'm good. Or if it does get drawn after them, then guess what? It's going to run after them. Because whatever it does in like a crazy, wild, animalistic way. So if you can get it turned towards godliness, it's going to run towards godliness. It's going to be passionate about godliness. Or if you can't get it turned towards godliness, it's going to be running after something else in a totally different direction and have no interest in godliness whatsoever. Whatever it does running. And this is sort of the classic line here. This is what's awesome. If you get it running towards God, in other words, if you can harness up your animal soul and get it working for the good guys, then what you do is something tremendous. It's worth your soul coming down into this body and undergoing the suffering and the loss of light and everything for this one thing, which is that you get your godly soul learns how to run. Because if you can get your animal soul running for Elokus, it brings your godly soul, of course, with it. And how did it learn to go for Elokus in the first place? Because your godly soul was able to impress upon it. It was able to integrate with it and speak to it and basically get it to go on its team. But it got something it wasn't expecting. It's now running. And the godly soul, as we said a second ago regarding Yaakov, he doesn't know how to run. He's not a runner. He's a masudar, organized, cold, intellect person. He's not enthralled because that's not what Kedusha really comes from. Kedusha comes from Kalim.
And it's not pragmatic for him to run because he'll kill the little children.
Exactly. But it's because usually, why is it not pragmatic for him to run usually? Because running is not usually connected with godliness. That's why he's going to kill the little children or chas v'shalom or the sheep or whatever. Because if you're going to start running, you're going to take me off of my task of only godliness, right? Because running, you're going to be sloppy, basically, right? You're going to spill outside the lines of Kedusha. I'm not running. You go by yourself. Because running usually is an animalistic thing, which is a contrary to godliness. But if you can get your animal soul to run where you want him to run, not where he was, then it's not sloppy. Then it's just accelerated. And suddenly the godly soul is able to do its job in an extremely accelerated manner, which it doesn't even know from unless it gets tangled up with its animalistic counterpart. It's just that there's a great conflict there. Either it's going to have to negate the animal soul because it's taking it in the wrong direction, or it's going to transform it, and then it brings the godly soul itself to a place that the godly soul could not go with it on its own. And this is the whole secret of everything, that we say coming into this world is a Yerida Litzorech Aliyah.
So the godly soul doesn't run because he's compensating for the animal soul?
He doesn't run because it's in a certain sense, the nature of godliness is not to run. Where are you running? Remember, how did godliness start? There was the world of Tohu, which was basically chaos, and Hashem could not create a world where every single thing in the world was clearly in the godly family, right? Because it was so much energy, it sort of broke out of the lines, and it created klippa. And that's this idea of chaos is like running, right? So that was like a type of, when God tried to put godliness and running together in the first place, which means it was like a very intensely power level of godliness, it didn't create a holy world. It created missing steps, and it created chaos, and it created ultimately klippa. You with me there?
But really, Hashem created klippa.
Yeah.
It's not like it created itself.
Right. He created it though from trying to fuse Elokus with too much intensity. Right? And meaning what? What does that mean? It means that as far as Hashem is concerned, boundaries, right, and worldliness is like a funny thing. It's like God is unbounded. He's infinite. So all of a sudden Hashem wants to make a world. If he wants to put himself in that world, it's a conflict. Because he's unlimited, unbounded, and the world is confined. Right? So if he's going to try and do that, what happens is that he's either going to have to limit himself and not show the full measure of godliness, or if he's going to show the full measure of godliness, he's going to have a problem with this finite world. Because the world is not going to be able to contain it, and when the world can't contain it, that's what turns into klippa. Right? That it's like too much godliness and it overspills the vessel, meaning the ability to contain, when you can't contain something, it spills over, it comes out looking other than what it is, it comes out looking like klippa. You with me? So he made that's what happened. He tried to make a world and he was infinite. So he made what he wound up doing is making a world of chaos. And this world of chaos is the world, unfortunately, that we live in. It's like a world...
You say he tried, it makes it sound like it was a mistake. He failed in his goal.
Okay, I mean, I guess in a certain sense, it was a necessary thing that he wanted, but it's certainly not his innermost desire. But it was like he had to do it in order to achieve his innermost desire. So in a certain sense, it was like we say, Hashem created the world and destroyed it, until he got to the right one. There is a concept that Hashem made a mistake, and what do I mean by that? We trace it back. Adam Arishon, he made a mistake. Yeah.
The moon made a mistake or something.
So we say where did it come out that Adam Arishon made a mistake? He said, it was already like in the pipeline because the moon before him made a mistake. The moon battled and was jealous that they were both equal in size, the sun and the moon.
Where does it say this?
It says it in Rashi in Chumash, Shtei Me'oros HaGadolim, right? There's the two great lights. So why were they two great lights? Because they were both the same size at first, till the moon got upset about it. Hashem said, okay, so you'll be small. So the moon made a mistake. Now you're already getting weird. The moon makes a mistake? Yeah, but okay, according to the Rambam, no problem. Moon can make a mistake because the celestial bodies have a consciousness according to Torah. That's cool. Where did the moon get it from? So it says because there was Shviras HaKeli. Right? Because there was a sort of mistake in the Seder Ishtalshus. It was like something went awry, and that's where the whole potential for making mistakes and ultimately where sin comes from, i.e. klippa. So okay, this is obviously a philosophical question. But yeah, let's just say on a simple level, Hashem made a mistake. Okay, it's a weird way of ending that conversation, but we're all Hasidic masters over here. Obviously, everything's in the family of good. But there was a sort of mistake. Now here's the point. Hashem made this mistake, but ultimately, what was the fallout from it is that he got wise, so to speak. And he said, you know what? I'm not doing this with godliness again. I'm not going to even try to put an infinite godliness into a finite world. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put a finite godliness into a finite world, and Shalom al Yisrael. We'll have everything good. The godliness will mellow itself out to be able to be contained by a world, and then we can have a godly world. And that's what he did when he made the world of Atzilus, the world of Tikkun, the realm of Kedusha, what we call Kedusha. And that's where the Torah basically comes from. Everything in the Torah is measured, right? That's what I was saying before. The animal has to be this old to offer it, and it has to be this species and this gender, and it has to be offered from this and this time. And if the guy thinks this is not good, and the guy thinks this is not good, and if the vessel is like this, it's not good, and the vessel is like millions of details. The whole Torah, every mitzvah is exactly like that. Why is it so exacting? Because Hashem decided to put Kedusha into a box. If you want to be holy, you have to fit it into something finite. That's called walking as opposed to running. That's called basically taking it slow, being methodical, and that's what Kedusha is, right? That's why it doesn't really go well with the animal who's a fallout from the chaos world, and he's running. So you're like, so the only thing I can do is slow you down. If you want to go with me, Esav, you got to walk at my pace. And if you're not willing to walk at my pace, run by yourself. I can't work with you. So what we're saying here is something very different. We're saying this is like the messianic concept. This is what the shtus of the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, why Hashem wants to dwell in a Beis Hamikdash made out of shitim and shtus? What's this? And why are we counting sota in these days? Same idea. It's because now we're going to pull a fancy one. We're going to get the Nefesh Bahamis with its running nature, but make it run where we want to run. It's, as opposed to slowing it down and making it walk with us, we're going to turn it running towards Kedusha, and it's going to elevate us to be able to run with Kedusha as opposed to walk. And that is something that the soul didn't think was possible. Because remember when we tried that before? You created chaos. You created like a world that we can't have a running, chaotic nature and a holy world at the same time. I thought you said that was the problem of Tohu. So this is the tikkun of Tohu. This is what's really the ultimate. This is why it's not a mistake. Because what Hashem was going for, He's going to get in the end. It just had to go through a certain process of, okay, we couldn't do it at first, but let's try it again after several thousand years of you guys working yourself out down there with the rules of engagement. Once you prepare yourself like an army, then we can go back and we can put an infinite light into a finite world, and we can handle it this time. And it's exactly the experience of Yitzias Mitzrayim, Sfiras HaOmer, Shavuos. Right? the union of Yetzias Mitzrayim was like tohu light, right? And it didn't affect the body, basically. It was not able, we weren't able to handle it. So Hashem said, well, that's not going to work. I'm going to give you finite light. You guys start working now with a light on really refining your vessels and taking care of yourself. And the end, what we're going to have is a animal soul who's able to serve God in his running nature. And this is Shavuos, basically. We're going to get Matan Torah. We're going to have the animal soul to like whole, a runner, together with that godly revelation from Yetzias Mitzrayim. And we're going to, basically, that's the Mashiach. The 50th gate. Got it?
Yeah.
All right then.
Silkworm goes into the cocoon to become.
All right. So let's keep going inside here. So mima nafshach, right? What does mima nafshach mean?
Nefesh Bahamas, Nefesh Lekis.
What does mima nafshach mean?
This way or
This or
that
that.
way.
Yeah, either way you look at it, right? Either way you look at the nefesh Bahamas, it doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. Right? Or not that it doesn't make sense, but he's a runner, right? And therefore, either he's not involved in godliness at all, because he's running somewhere else, or if he's going to be involved in godliness, he's going to run with godliness. And this is what we say, the famous quote, Rov tevuas v'koach shor. You can get more grain with the power of an ox, right? That if you get your animal soul working, your ox working for you, you can plow the field in a quarter of the time, or much less than a quarter of the time, right? Because basically, if you get your animal soul working for you, you do things in a much stronger way. He's an animal. He's a beast. It makes it that the godly soul itself becomes a runner. The godly soul on its own doesn't know how to run. And therefore, it's being drawn to godliness is very measured and limited, as we just said. But if it can harness up the animal soul, or it adds a new strain of light that it was unfamiliar with, which means it gets now a running. And what is the running? Just so we can get this a little bit more into our lives. It's something which is beyond limitation and measure. So how does this look in you? This is when you start serving God in a ridiculous way. You're no longer organized. In other words, like here's an example. In the old days, let's say it's like the normal kosher Torah way is you get a job, right? Then you get a house, and then you get married. That makes pretty much good sense. If you ask anyone who did it in opposite order, they'll tell you it's insane. But nonetheless, the Rebbe told us, let's go insane. That's our whole generation's thing. It's about being crazy.
High five.
Right? The Rebbe started the generation with a mimer talking about turning shtus of the world into shtus of kedusha. Our whole generation is based on shtus of kedusha, being stupid for Hashem. Right? Literally. And this is what we did. And the Rebbe said, now, guess what? Get married, and everything will work out. And if you're ever going to try and do something like that, trust me, it works out, but it's supernatural. You basically, when you go into a state where you are insane for Hashem, you access insane levels of godliness, which you don't access when you do things in an orderly way. When you do things in an orderly way, you access orderly godliness, which is great, but it's not insane godliness. So this is the whole idea. When you get your nefesh Bahamas to run with you, you start doing godly things in a way that's sort of ridiculous, that's not measured, that's not bound. You're going to stand literally on a soapbox with a pair of tefillin and start screaming, "Are you Jewish? Are you Jewish? Are you Jewish?" This is not a Jewish thing to do. Right? This is a traditionally and ancestrally, no one ever did that. It was not sneeze, it was not appropriate. It was just like a weird action. And now it's like the calling card of our generation, right? To be wild for Hashem. Of course, you have to do wild for Hashem in the way the Rebbe tells us to be wild for Hashem. Even that sort of has its own limitations. But
can we have a crazy laugh? Like,
Aren't we told not to expect miracles? You can't put yourself in danger and things like this because you can't expect that Hashem is going to cover your
but if you're on your way to do a mitzvah, you don't care if there's going to be a miracle or not. That's the point. Mesiras nefesh means you don't care. So don't make a miracle, but I'm doing this for Hashem because I'm an insane Jew. Now guess what's going to happen?
Sounds like running. It is running.
Yeah, and guess what's going to happen? A miracle will happen. You're not doing it because you're expecting the miracle.
Like a leap of faith.
But it's going to happen. Because when you do things with such an intense inner running, you access crazy levels of Hashem.
But it inspires those that are. It inspires people to run without any understanding why they're running.
Well, no. If you're running for the animalistic self of you, then stop. That's just, or just leave him. Let him run. You got to harness him in. But if you're running towards godliness, of course you don't know where you're going. It's a wild thing to do, to run. You can't have the proper,
I mean, for instance, let's say that the boy that married my daughter was doing the running, but my daughter wasn't, and so then you got a problem.
Wait, you're saying?
No, I mean, obviously you have to
be crazy for Hashem. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying is, I mean, I'm exploring. I'm not. I don't.
Well, if he was really running for God,
right?
Okay, then what it means is that he's going to be so passionate about his Yiddishkeit that it's going to, whatever he was going to accomplish walking, he'll now accomplish running, but in more so, right? So if let's say, I don't know, you're talking about your daughter, but let's say a guy marries a lady who's not totally up to the religious standards. So first of all, what is he doing there? And if he says, okay, I'm going to go for it, it's because he sees that he's going to be able to bring her up. So if he's going to bring her up at volume 3, let her bring him up at volume 10. In other words, you're in the good side.
What if it just? I guess my concern is that what if everyone starts getting married at 12 again?
Yeah, I'm really concerned about that too, guys.
So,
come on, 13.
I have no problem with a culture instead of
That's
well, here's the thing. All right. I get it what you're saying. Let me just point this out, right? There's a fine line, right? And this is a conversation I was having with one of the Bachrim yesterday. There's a fine line with just looking like you're running for Kedusha, right. And really just it's a thin veil for your Nefesh Bahamas, just being a Nefesh Bahamas wearing Jewish clothes. In other words, you have to be in line with God and run. If you're out of line with God and you just look like you're doing something Jewish and you're running, that's just another trick of the Yetzer Hara. So in other words, if that's what I'm saying, you still have to run the way the Rebbe tells you to run and where the Rebbe tells you to run. Rebbe being you're Nefesh Elokis. If you're gonna just start getting wild, so then you're an animal soul. No, it's no big deal. We know that the animal soul knows how to run. Right. But the point is, if you can get your animal soul to really do what your godly soul wants. So we're in a generation where your godly soul is not permitting you to marry at 12. So that running into that direction is just running into the animal soul's place. It's not running into the godly soul's place. But we have new instructions. In other words, it's still according to rules. It's just that you're taking those rules and you're going kind of like berserk with them, as opposed to doing it in an organized way. So you can't take this into your own hands. Of course, it's all about following the Torah and receiving instruction and listening to the godly soul's message. It's just that you're doing it wild.
But it feels like we're almost being
It feels like
controlled by the Rebbe. I hate to say it, but like it feels like I'm fearless all of a sudden. Like where I'd be afraid to go do these things of tshuva, it just feels like someone's holding my hand through it.
Yeah, that's what it is. Okay.
It seems like Hasidus is that.
Yeah, that's what I was trying. Yeah.
Like before, it was like okay, learn Chumash, learn Mishnah.
Yeah.
Now it's like just.
It is. It is. Hasidus is the Rebbe. It's the Torah that's telling us to have this new access. Because what is Hasidus? It's like the Yechida. It's a new dimension of godliness that came into the world. And when you tap into your Yechida, that's your power of Mesiras Nefesh. That's your power of running. Let's go on though, because we're getting a little bit caught up. Do you mind? Okay. So he says
begin.
And let's try again. So he says that this is the Indian that you're now going to be running higher Medida B'Agbala. Last 5 lines from the bottom at the period. V'zeu Indian narutza lashon rabim, and that's why in the pasuk it says mishacheni, draw me. That was Yetzias Mitzrayim, a singular. Then it says acharecha narutza, we will run. Goes very well, because guess who's running? Not just the animal soul is running anymore. We are running, which is a new chiddush that the godly soul didn't know how to run before. So now it's we will run. That the nefesh Bahamis po'el shagam nefesh elokis, that the animal soul affects that also the godly soul tiyeh ba'ofen de marutz elokus. It turns into a runner. It never tasted that before. Ubechlalos inyan zeh. In general, this Inyan, the avoda of acharecha narutza, we will run after you. Hu bizman shebein yitzias mitzrayim levatan Torah. We're in that period now. This is a great time to be alive. The spheres of Omer is a powerhouse because basically, we were just learning also in a sefer. We have a class on the Jewish month. It's for girls though, but it's basically the whole idea of this month is that there's a certain divine name, Yud Kei Vav Kei combination that resides in this month, and the letters is Yishal HaMishalel, Haskel V'Deya Osi, which means basically it's Yud Kei Kei Vav. This is the way that Hashem's name shines in this month. Every one of the 12 months there's a different permeation of Yud Kei Vav Kei. There's 12 permeations. Each one shines in a certain month. You with me? Mm-hmm. So this one is Yud Kei Kei Vav, and it comes out with the pasuk Yishal HaMishalel Haskel v'yodeosi, which means if you want to praise yourself on anything, don't praise yourself on your wealth or your riches or your intellect. Praise yourself on how much you know me, right? And the whole idea is that this month is a month of knowing Hashem, and that's why it's a month of basically of preparing for Matan Torah, because there's a tremendous amount of wisdom and intellect that opens up in this month. There's powers in this month, Pashit, and that's why it's called the month of healing. Ani Hashem Rofecha is basically a Rosh Tevus of the word ER. I am Hashem, your healer. And what are you being healed from? This whole process, your animal soul is on board somehow. There's a certain koach that we got from Pesach to start to want to serve Hashem, to do work. It doesn't change you. It gives you the impetus to change. If you haven't noticed, right? There's a special time. There's like a working on yourself vibe going on. Merkava? Yeah, exactly. And what's the idea of the Merkava? Same idea. The Merkava is that you get yourself fully in line with Hashem's will, right? The Merkava is the divine chariot, which means you're being driven and you go where you're driven. There's a certain power. So this is what the period we're in right now. It's the period to get your animal soul on board with your life. It's like Hashem gave us every month has something special, Like you said with Elul. Elul is like a time. It's called like a miklat, It's like a place of refuge, And Nisan has its of miracles and so forth. Every month has something. This month is like a power in the month of somehow enabling yourself to get your life together, get yourself on board, turn things around, And if you look, everyone I know is having this experience because we're having help from above to do this right now, to get ourselves ready for Matan Torah.
This is the highest month of the year.
Yeah. Afterwards, through this avoda, boim elagilu de Matan Torah, it enables us to come to the revelation of Matan Torah, where it says, the king will bring me to his inner chambers. Okay. We have a few more minutes. You guys have 5 more minutes of koach? What's that?
Which is Matan Torah.
Matan Torah. All right.
I can understand how counting the Omer can put you in this state, but it feels to me because I haven't been counting the Omer, I haven't even been paying attention. So it feels like to me...
You counted the Omer yesterday.
Yeah, I did.
And you had a sudden great day, didn't you?
Well, but I had 10 great days before that.
This one's a little bit different, if I may say so myself.
Yeah, high five. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Go, girl.
Count it now.
One Omer.
No, serious. Give this man a sitter. Okay.
Oh, wait, I have to count it again. I just counted it.
All right. So anyway, going on a few more lines. How you feeling, Yonasan? You hanging in there?
Yeah,
You okay?
Baruch Hashem.
Woo, Chevra! We're going to Matan Torah. All right. Hine bebirur zeh the nefesh Bahamis. This refinement of the animal soul. Yeah, let's hook a brother
Can
up
I
here.
count the rest before, just to read them?
I don't think so.
Can I look at them without reading them?
Yeah.
Can I go?
Sorry, just give me a minute because even though achshav emasai, as they say.
Tattoo them on you like memento, like the movie.
That movie's crazy.
Yes.
Here you go, my friend. You have to stand. That's your day right there. No, don't say brachas. You have to stand.
I'll wait until we're done.
Okay. Hine bebirur zeh the nefesh Bahamis yesh beis inyani. when it comes to this refining of the animal soul, there's two phases to it. We're just at the beginning of this mimer. It gets mamish into this concept. There's two phases of refining the animal soul. Birur hamochin. One is refining the mind of the nefesh habahamis. Ubir hamidus the nefesh habahamis. One is refining the emotional attributes, the characteristics, the traits of the nefesh habahamis.
What does that mean exactly?
The mind
of
the mind of the animal soul.
The way it thinks?
Yeah, basically, it's, in other words, its mind. Why do you have bad characteristics? Because you have bad ideas, right? In other words, your thinking process is messed up. You're getting this from your parents, you're getting this from your society, we're getting this from your own taivas, whatever it is, and it has its own mind. The animal has a mind, right? Especially a human animal has a very sophisticated mind. So basically, because this mind is corrupt, it's the source of all your corrupt behaviors. So there's two things that have to be fixed: the mind of the animal soul, and then the behaviors that follow that mind of the animal soul. The inyan hakravas haomer hu birur hamochin to nefesh habahamis. So guess what? The good news is your mind of your animal soul has already been zapped. It's already taken care of, because this is a process that happens like sort of in a powerful way from the mitzvahs. The inyan of the hakravas haomer, the offering of the Omer sacrifice itself, right? The barley offering itself. This is what refines the mind of the nefesh habahamis. Again, like you might say, well, I didn't feel anything, but let's just go back in time. There was a day, the 16th of Nisan, the day after Pesach, where there was a special offering and there was a whole lot of effort put into it. They would go out the night before, and by the way, the whole Am Yisrael would wait to cut one piece of barley from the ground until this took place. It was like a collective consciousness, and they finally cut the best of the barley and they brought it, and there was a whole fancy traditions and customs how they did it, and they would offer that offering in the Beis HaMikdash in Yerushalayim on the Mizbeach. It made its impression on every human being, and what it did was it mamish affected the mind of your animal soul. And guess what? Even though we don't have all that fun stuff, it still happens baruchnis, right? The day after Pesach is a bamba, right? It's a huge day which basically affects every single person's mind of their animal soul, because it's the offering of the barley, as it were. And what's the whole idea? This offering comes from barley, hu liyosa meichel behema, and of course we know that the barley is the animal food, so we're dealing with the animal soul. Shezeu mishum shenyanu bira nefesh habahamis, right? It's because it's working specifically on the side of your animal soul. Ella shebezeh gufa harizeh bira mochin to nefesh habahamis, but in the animal soul itself, the barley offering is specifically working on the brain, the mind of the nefesh habahamis. And why is that? Where do we see that? It's because it comes from grain, right? In other words, the whole idea is that grain in general is an inyan of seichel, right? Sorim henrimine dagen, right? Barley is one of the 5 species of what's called grain. In other words, you can make motzi on it. It's like
you can't call father unless you had grain.
That's the idea. The inyan hadagan more el amochin. Why does grain have to do anything to do with mind? Kamuvan b'maimer azal. We learned this in a maimer about matzah before Pesach. Ein hatinok yodeh likros abba ad yitum tam dagan. A child does not know how to call his father until he tastes grain, the taste of grain. What's the idea? Is that when you eat, literally, a child, it's human development, the second you eat from the 5 species which are called grain, you have awareness that you did not have before. Grain creates awareness. It's like an intellectual experience to eat grain. And therefore, the offering of grain in the form of barley, it's like a dialing into mind of the nefesh habahamis. You see that? Grain of barley is the mind of the nefesh habahamis. And that, because grain is mind, barley is nefesh habahamis, the animal soul. So in other words, that's why they dialed in that particular offering in the Beis HaMikdash on the 16th of Nisan. The mind of the nefesh habahamis is offered up to Hashem. And therefore there's like this tremendous, in other words, we're saying that in this month there's this koach to fix yourself and change yourself. Where's it coming from? It's coming from this, because the mind of the animal soul he knows who his tati is all of a sudden. He's tasted a certain awareness, right? What do we say? What happened the day before that on Pesach? You ate matzah, right? And we said the same thing about matzah. The matzah is you eat the bread, and then you know who Tati is. But that was wheat, not barley. And wheat is connected to the godly soul, which means your godly soul has a new awareness. Your godly soul knows who its Tati is on a new level the day before. Or actually, yeah, right? No, the day before. Pesach.
Well, you said the day after Pesach.
Right, the day after Pesach is barley.
Right, so.
But Pesach is matzah, right? So the matzah is the grain, which is the mind, of the godly soul, because it's wheat. And that's what happens on Pesach. We said the whole idea of matzah was like you're eating the bread of faith, we call it, right? What is it? Why is it called the bread of faith? Because you have new levels of faith open up to you just from eating the bread. It's a mamisha, it's a boomba, right? It's a powerful
A boomba.
a bomba. It does something to you. And what does it do? It makes your godly soul have new awareness. But the next day, you so to speak, spiritually eat the barley, which is the grain, the brains of the animal soul. Suddenly your animal soul is listening to what your godly whole soul has to say. It's been refined.
That's where they get the term fuel for thought.
Yeah?
But it's awareness, but it's different than faith.
It's totally different from faith. It's a reasoner, right? The godly soul is like sees God, and basically it's just like drawn after some supernatural love of the divine. That has nothing to do with this world. The animal soul is like, okay, I guess I have some bad habits. I guess I'm not getting along with all the people in my life. What do I do about it? All of a sudden, where does it get the wherewithal to ask that question? The whole year, it was just having bad habits and not getting along with people. Suddenly it's like, wait a second, what's wrong with me? That's not faith. That's like a willingness to listen.
Which one are we talking about
The
now?
animal soul.
So that's more the emotions as opposed to the...
Well, it's the intellect of the animal soul. On one day. One day just, boom, takes care of the whole intellect of the animal soul. The next, as we're going to say now, then you start counting the Omer. That's now the work on the emotions of the animal soul. Because we said you need to work on both the intellect of the animal soul and the emotions. The intellect is basically done more or less for you in this time. You know, you have to count your first day of the Omer, basically. But that original offering is a switch that you eat this grain of barley and your mind is suddenly on board. But now comes the difficult part of counting 49 days and working out the response to that. Now, just because you realize you need therapy doesn't mean that the work has been done, right? Part of it has. You need therapy. That's already knowing your problem is the basic is huge. But then you got to deal with each and every single little issue in your life, 49 different midos, and it's going to take a long time. And that's the two parts of this experience. It's offering the Omer and counting the Omer. It's the mind of the animal soul and the midos of the animal soul. And with that, we will conclude.
Can the
Hayom Shabbat?
Can the mind of the animal soul be compared to anything else besides barley?
Probably there's other comparisons, but at this point, this is the only one that we're dealing with. Yeah.
When is your birthday?
My birthday?
Establish the timeline.
Yeah, my birthday is the day after the mind of the animal soul is repaired.
17.
Yeah. But interestingly,
That makes a lot of sense. For what
but
happened.
interestingly though, in this time when there's no Beis Hamikdash,
It goes on that day.
it's that day.
See? You know what happened to me? Remember I came up and that whole story with me?
Yeah?
It happened then.
Wow.
Right? And it totally put me in check.
Interesting,
I was like,
huh?
I gotta stop hanging out over there.
Right.
All these people,
Right.
I gotta go up here.
Right.
Right? It totally
Yeah.
freaked me out. It got me close to God in a way that was like,
Amazing, huh? It's